Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you all for coming here and participating in this Shravana Kirtan camp, and giving myself also an opportunity to distribute topics of Krishna by speaking. I first thought of having these Shravan Kirtan camps some years ago as a way to give an opportunity, particularly to my disciples who don't see me very often, to those disciples of mine who don't see me very often, which I suppose is most of them, to have an intense session of hearing from me, and of course Kirtan will be there also. And it's developed as such that I now I participate in many throughout the year in various places. You don't have to wait for me to come to do this. You can do anytime, any place. You just sang a kirtan in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur praises, he speaks about the practices which are favorable for devotional advancement. So he speaks also there about the glories of Ekadashi. Madhavatiti Bhakti Janani Jatane Palana Kari. Can you understand that? Madhavatiti means the titi, the lunar cum solar day dedicated to Madhava. In other words, Ekadashi. Commonly known as Harivasaram. Bhakti Janani is the mother of devotion. Jatane Palana Kari. Jatane means sayatna, with care. Carefully I observe it. So you could, every Ekadashi, you could hold such a function. For instance, it's a suggestion. The problem is that companies like Hewlett-Packard and even your local, if you're working in a local Kirana shop, they don't observe Ekadashi. So, if you want to observe Ekadashi, it becomes incompatible with your work life. In Saudi Arabia, the daily life, and in many Muslim-dominated countries, the daily life is punctuated by 5 times, or if you're in Iran, maybe 3 times, for the prayers. And the whole country goes in slow motion during the Ramadan. But in India, there's no such consideration for Ekadashi. Or maybe you could do something like that. Once a month, once every 2 weeks, devotees come together, hear and chant together. You do that, Sunday programs are there. But they usually last half a day at the most. Usually it's arati and with a kirtan and some lecture, and that's about it in many places. That's why I also thought of having these Shravan Kirtan camps. Instead of spending Sundays going from one place to another, 3 or 4 places, just stay in one place and let everyone who's interested come. We can have more time instead of wasting time sitting in traffic jams. Actually, we should do it every day, every moment. There's one Gauriya Vaishnava, he's passed away now, he wrote a book, Manindranath Guha was his name, Bengali. So he wrote a book just emphasizing to all devotees that we're supposed to chant Hare Krishna. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. Sankirtan Pravartak Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sankirtan Jagye Jai Bhaje Shaidanya. So, it's easy to translate into Telugu. It's the same. Sankirtan Pravartak Shri Krishna Chaitanya, the inaugurator of the Sankirtan is Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Pravartak, you must have the same word, is it? Does it have a different meaning in Telugu? Sankirtan Pravartak Shri Krishna Chaitanya. You don't have it in Telugu, huh? So, not commonly used. Not there, not commonly used. It's probably there, but not commonly used. So it means the inaugurator, you could say, some stapak, something. Sankirtan Yagya, in or by Sankirtan Yagya, Jai Bhaje, who worships, Shai Dhanya, whoever worships him via the process of Sankirtan, is Dhanya, which means glorious, or glorious is a Dhanya, fortunate. So he said that if we're going to be followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, everyone should at least 2 hours every day come together and chant Hare Krishna together. And in this way worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, Srila Prabhupada gave us a program of chanting in Sankirtan, Mangal Arati, and evening Arati. And we have many temples throughout the world where devotees come together morning and evening and chant Hare Krishna. And at ISKCON Vrindavan, he said all the devotees should come and join the midday Arati also. Probably because so many visitors are there at midday. Because nowadays at ISKCON Vrindavan there are so many visitors throughout the day. He also said for all the temples that there should be, well, he said different things in different circumstances, yeah. But at one time he said that in all the temples, the devotees, some devotees should be there at least for the midday arati, to sing for the Lord. In many of our temples, there's only, for the arati, apart from the morning and evening arati, there's only the pujari present with the Lord and there's some bhajan recording playing. So you could also make a robot pujari and make everything mechanized, yeah. But it's important that we personally apply ourselves to this process. Even this hearing, nowadays we can listen to lectures, recorded lectures. But it's also important to come and personally participate. Otherwise we could just be in our own little cottage with our little recording device, and then we can have all our kirtan, we can choose which Mangalati we want to watch on the internet. We can do it all virtually. But it's good to come personally together with devotees also. By their association, we become purified, And we also get the opportunity to serve devotees, that also comes in that song that was just sung. Bhakata seva parama siddhi prema bhakti lati kamula. Prema lati karamula, yeah. Anyway, I'll say it in English, and it'll be the same in Telugu. That to serve the devotees is in itself the highest perfection, and it is the root of the creeper of pure love of Krishna. Shravana Kirtana Karo Anukhana Ashata Pachala Chari Kahe Premananda Manusha Janama Shafala Karo Nabhari. This is from a Bengali kirtan, not very well known in our ISKCON world and somewhat known among Bengali Vaishnavas. So these are the last words of these kirtan. So Shravana Kirtan Karo Anukhana. Anukshana means every moment engage in hearing and chanting about Krishna. And give up all nonsense talk, gossip. And Premananda, who is the author of this song, Kahe Premananda Manusha Janama Shafalakara. He says, make your human life perfect, your human birth perfect, and don't delay. Turnam yate. Turnam means do it now, don't waste any time. Shravan and Kirtan, Harinama Ruchi, those who have a taste for chanting the holy name, that is also considered, that is in itself the perfection of life. So by chanting with devotees, that helps us to increase our taste for chanting the holy names. There's like Devahari, he was just chanting now. He always likes to chant. He looks very happy always when he's chanting the holy names of Krishna. So that's a great gift, that's a great fortune if we feel happiness in chanting the holy names. Once Srila Prabhupada, I'll tell an anecdote of Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur. At that time, the only building in Mayapur, you can't even see it now because other buildings have been built on top of it. It's difficult to explain, but there was one building which was by far the biggest building in the whole of Mayapur, but now it's smaller than the other buildings. That was the first pakka or big brick-built temple of Radha Madhava at ISKCON Mayapur. And the temple room was on the ground floor, and Srila Prabhupada's quarters were on the second floor, or the third floor by American calculation, by British or Indian calculation, second floor. And every year devotees on Srila Prabhupada's order would come from all over the world at the time of Gaur Purnima to celebrate a festival of several days. There was Shravanam Kirtanam festival. It wasn't called that, but practically it was. Srila Prabhupada said that 24-hour kirtan should go in Mayapur. So mostly, during most of the year, that was done by 3 Bengali devotees, quite elderly. One was called Maya Manush. That's an initiated name. That's the name of Krishna. Another was Sarvagya. And I can't remember the third one's name, but they just chant all day. They go on chanting all day. That chanting 24-hour kirtan is still going on in Mayapur at the Prabhupada's original or the reconstruction of Srila Prabhupada's Bhajan Kutir, just near the main entrance. And in the temple also, pretty much throughout the day, kirtan goes on. So most of the year there'll just be 3 men chanting most of the time. But during the festival there were hundreds of devotees participating in the kirtans. And the first year I went there, 1976, apart from the kirtans, there were all-day lectures by different sannyasis. So Shravan Kirtan camp. And there were kirtans with hundreds of enthusiastic young brahmacharis jumping and dancing and banging the gongs and uproariously blissful. So one time, in mid-morning, Srila Prabhupada is sitting in his room and he's just amazing kirtan, this sound was coming up. And Srila Prabhupada told his servant, call all the GBCs, they should come here immediately, all the leaders of the movement. So they all came one by one. And Srila Prabhupada would only call the GBCs impromptu like that if there was some very serious, urgent matter. So everyone was wondering, what's going on? So when all the GBC members had assembled, and if you go, you can see Prabhupada's darshan room. It's actually very small, so everyone had to crowd inside. And they're expecting some very serious, heavy matter to be discussed. Because even though ISKCON is a spiritual movement, it's operating in the material world, and regularly there are various disruptions and disturbances, which is one reason why Srila Prabhupada formed the GBC, to deal with such matters. And the GBC members, Srila Prabhupada called them all suddenly. They were thinking there must be some really very bad disturbance going on, that Prabhupada has suddenly called us together. But Prabhupada was just sitting back, relaxed and smiling. So when all the GBCs came, Prabhupada said, just hear that. Because the kirtan was going on all the time, they didn't know what Prabhupada meant. Prabhupada said, I just called you all to hear this kirtan. So Prabhupada said that in future we should keep 500 men from all over the world in Mayapur just for doing kirtan 24 hours a day. We didn't get to that yet. But you see, Srila Prabhupada himself, he took had such taste in the holy names. He wanted that everyone join in this chanting. Even sometimes there's bad publicity in the newspapers. Can everyone understand? Criticizing the devotees in various ways. Because in the early days of ISKCON in the Western countries, there was a lot of negative propaganda against us. But Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter. Actually, it's good. Because in the newspaper, if they put Hare Krishna thieves, Hare Krishna murderers, Hare Krishna child kidnappers, again and again they're saying Hare Krishna. So that's good. And he used to write things like that, but absurd things. They used to write things like that, absurd things. But everyone got to know about Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada said, somehow or other, if they chant, they'll become purified. And actually it happened that many of the young people especially, they thought that, well, if the official establishment, the authorities and the newspapers, if they're so much against us, then we're probably something quite good. Because they had a very low opinion of what they call the establishment. In India, the old culture is to respect the king, and I think that's going on to a large extent up to the present time. That whoever's in power, people tend to respect. Whoever has a big position, they give some respect. We find that Sanatana Goswami, he gave, not only Sanatana Goswami, but all the Brahmanas and devotees who are with him, they gave great respect to Nawab Hussain Shah, who was the Muslim emperor in Bengal, because they considered that, well, he kills cows, he destroys temples, but still he got that position by the grace of God due to some previous good action. So we should respect that. But in the Western countries, they have a long tradition of anti-authoritarianism. At least in Western Europe. Maybe, I don't think it's the same in Poland. In Poland, during the communist regime, if you were anti-authority, then prison was the most likely option, the most likely destination for you. If not, Dehanta Prapti. But they weren't so tough as the Russians. Not so bad, but it was tough. Communist rule? When was that? From after the Second World War? You mean the uprising against the communists? Oh, that just happened just like that, yeah. You don't even know about it, yeah. Yeah, they have the Catholic culture, they respect the church like that. No, their communism probably wasn't as tough as in... even in Russia, it was different in different places. In Moscow, our devotees were more persecuted. In Petersburg, at that time it was Leningrad, the devotees were doing programs all over the place. Not public Harinam, but the authorities, they turned a blind eye, so to speak. And in Armenia, they were extremely heavy. It was the same country, but in different places. Some places the authorities are very strict, others less so. What struggle the devotees went through to establish Krishna consciousness there. Struggle? It's not exactly kashta, is it? There's another word. Sangharsh in Hindi. Sangram in Bengali.
This is hard working, right? That's hard working. Struggle.
Well, kashtam is just a very general term.
Struggle
There must be a word for struggle. It's a common phenomenon in every culture, except maybe Polynesian.
Struggle అంటే కరెక్ట్ గా ఎట్లా నిర్వచనం చెప్పొచ్చు చెప్తే తెలిసి చెప్పు. సంఘర్షణ ఏదో సంఘర్షణకి లోనయ్యారు.
Sangharshana, as in Hindi. Sangharsh.
హిందీ పదం.
Anyway, it wasn't easy. Put it like that.
అది
Kashtam. Chala kashtam.
ఏమాత్రం సులువు మాత్రం కాదు. కష్టం చాలా కష్టం. సులువు మాత్రం కాదు.
Everywhere, beginning with Prabhupada himself, what difficulties he went through to establish this movement. To establish ISKCON in India was also very difficult in the beginning. Prabhupada wanted to he said that my guru ordered me to preach in the Western countries. Now I've established something there. My own personal desire is to spread Krishna consciousness in India. But it was very difficult in those days. Hardly any Indians were joining, and most of those, or many of those who did join, they came to see if they could steal some tape recorder or something like that. In those days, a tape recorder was really something very special. It was India was much less economically developed, and there was a lot of poverty. So Prabhupada brought so many Western devotees, and most of them didn't stay. So it was very difficult in so many ways. Many people distrusted us, or they thought that, who are these people? They're not sadhus, they're just some hippies. So one time, among the devotees in Calcutta, there was a lot of tension among themselves. It was very difficult. There was only one tap in the whole building, and water came with a little, in the summer, water would come with a little trickle for about 1 hour a day. And most devotees, they weren't used to, none of them were used to such intense heat. And although there were fans, but most of the time there was electric fans, but most of the time there was no electricity. And devotees had dysentery and malaria, and typhoid, all kinds of diseases. Some of them had them all at once. So it was very, very difficult in many ways. So they were waiting for Prabhupada to come so they could all complain about each other to him. So when Prabhupada came, he said that he talked about himself, how I had to struggle to establish this movement in the West. No one wanted to help him go to the West. Everyone discouraged him. He only with much endeavor he was able. He didn't have money to go. He convinced this Sumati Morarji to give him a free passage. Then he got such difficulty to get clearance from the government to leave the country, because they wouldn't let anyone leave without checking to see do they have any criminal case against them. Do they have debts? They're just leaving and they're going to leave their debts behind. There's a big checking process. And Indian government bureaucracy in those days didn't move any faster than it moves today. So even to get out of the country, Srila Prabhupada, that was the first achievement. Then this Prabhupada was narrating to his disciples, and he had 2 heart attacks on the ship going over. Yeah, that word they know. That you don't have to translate. Heart attack. It's so common. If you translate in Telugu, they might not understand it. Then he landed. He had he didn't know anyone there. He was staying with some Agarwal who was completely westernized, had married a Western wife and was eating meat. Of course, nowadays all Agarwals pretty much eat meat, but in those days Agarwal meant vegetarian, unless they went to the West. Then in the beginning there was no interest. So many difficulties he underwent. So then Prabhupada told his disciples that, if you're going to do anything, if we're really going to get anything done here, you have to accept difficulties and struggle as I struggled. So if we're not focused on trying to bring Krishna consciousness to others and the struggle to do so, then we'll struggle among ourselves. And there'll be some tension among ourselves. This is the age of Kali, the age of quarrel. Even among devotees there may be disagreements, even severe disagreements. But at least we can chant Hare Krishna together and realize that even though we may disagree, we're all here to glorify Krishna. So Devahari Prabhu, please lead for chanting Hare Krishna for some minutes, and I'll come back in a few minutes. Krishna willing.